When we look at the lives of Eleazar, of Zacchaeus, and even of Elizabeth of Hungary, the woman whose feast we celebrate today, there is a common thread that comes through them all and joins the three of them together, and that is love of the Lord. Now, they come to it in different ways. Eleazar, a faithful man, not willing to betray the law, is one who comes to it by way of an understanding, a relationship, a covenantal relationship, if you will, from the God of Abraham, of Isaac, of Jacob, of recognizing that this law that is put in place of not eating unclean meats and impure foods is one that might be a bodily restriction, but one that works to purify the soul. And faithfulness to this law is one in which this faithfulness comes by living out the law as best as one can in one's everyday life to recognize the union that it brings with Almighty God. Now, Zacchaeus is an interesting fellow because he is a tax collector and a wealthy man, and most of the tax collectors in Jesus' day were wealthy men because of the fact that they made their living really off the backs of their brothers and sisters. They would, along with taking the tax, would take a little for themselves, a commission, if you will, but they would add a good probably 20 or 30% to that tax collection so that they themselves could make a living. And so while they were Jewish citizens, they were agents of Rome and thus seen as betrayers. So when Jesus says, "I must stay at your house, Zacchaeus," this probably raises the eyebrows not only of the crowd, but maybe of Jesus' own disciples, because of the fact that Zacchaeus is seen as a sinner. Zacchaeus is seen as one who works on a different set of laws, if you will, not the covenantal laws of his people, but of the laws of Rome, and so is seen as a traitor, for lack of a better term, certainly. And when we look at Zacchaeus, we think to ourselves, well, here's a man who is kind of playing both sides of the fence. But he does come to an understanding of his relationship with God, and it's more of a moment of conversion, because then in speaking to Jesus, he says, "Behold, half of my possessions, Lord, I shall give to the poor. And if I have extorted anything from anyone, I shall repay it 4 times over." In other words, he knows that he's done wrong. He knows that he's shortchanged his brothers and sisters. He knows he's given to extortion. But he comes to a moment of conversion by saying he shall give to the poor. He shall repay the money that he has extorted. In other words, he will make up for those sins. He will do his penance, and he will change his way of living. So it comes to a moment of conversion for Zacchaeus. And then we have Elizabeth of Hungary, a woman who, because of her position of wealth as a royal, she herself could easily just live very comfortably, and she could just care for herself. Yet she sees Christ in the poor. She sees Christ in her servants and her subjects, and those people that she ultimately is called to serve. Elizabeth of Hungary was a woman who herself knew hardship, for she was thrown out of her kingdom by her in-laws and had to be restored to the throne. And when she was, she became a third-order Franciscan. And she continued to extend herself in love for the poor. So when we look at these 3 figures, Eleazar, Zacchaeus, and Elizabeth of Hungary, we come to recognize that God works in all of us in many and varied ways. May we as a people of faith continue to recognize the work that God is still doing in us. And may we come to a moment like Zacchaeus of conversion, of newness of heart, so that when it comes our time to make an accounting of our lives, we may do so with full hearts, knowing that we have lived and worked and served the Lord in union with his plan for our lives.